Hey there, Jimmy. What are you doing in my house?
Well, hey there, Sardonic. I was just learning about the biological sex spectrum.
The what?
You know, the biological sex spectrum. Because science doesn't support the biological sex binary and can't explain how intersex people exist.
What do you mean? It totally can. Where does this shit even come from?
It's this video by Justin Dennis.
Holy crap, Jimmy, that woman's choking on a dick!
Sardonic, no, you can't say that. That's Justin Dennis. She prefers female pronouns.
Okay, I'm done with this game. Jimmy, roll the video.
I want to start out this video by telling you a quick story.
Oh, sweet, a story. Tell us the one about how you became a ventriloquist. You know, talking with a giant wiener in your throat.
So there was a 70-year-old man a while back who went to the doctor to have hernia surgery. He had already fathered 4 children throughout his life and identified as a male for his whole life, but when the doctors opened him up for surgery, they found a uterus.
Wait, so he was the mom and dad? That's pretty extreme.
Alright, so that's a bit of a shocking story, but it's a great illustration of how sex determination isn't nearly as simple as we think it is.
It's probably much more simple than the shit show you're gonna try to turn it into.
You see, sex and gender are 2 different things. I've already talked about how gender is much more like a spectrum than a binary, but sex is also more like a spectrum than a binary.
Holy shit. You know what these people remind me of? That younger sibling that always wanted to hang out with you and your friends and cried until your mom made you take them along so they wouldn't feel left out, but by that point the damage was already done and no one could have fun anymore? Just had to get that off my chest.
Unfortunately, in talking about gender, we often say that someone's sex is male or female, but their gender identity can differ from that.
Sure, you've got people with scientifically supported conditions transitioning from one sex to another. No problem there. Then you've got the gender spectrum, which is almost the exact same thing, except not supported by science in any way, and you've got a man who thinks he's a woman who thinks she's a man who thinks he's a woman who thinks she's Kevin Bacon. At the end of the day, you're just a retard.
So let's start out with, what do you mean by male or female? Do you mean having XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes?
I guess that kind of depends on what your definition of having XX or XY chromosomes is, but I want to hear about what you think about it first.
Because actually, most people never have their chromosomes tested.
That is very true, most people do not.
Doctors take a look at your genitals and decide which sex they think you are, which is also problematic, but we'll come back to that.
Oh, fuck. This is a classic case of when the weatherman tells you the shitstorm is about to hit, but you left your umbrella by the door.
For example, there was a case of a 46-year-old woman who had already had 2 healthy children, and she went to the doctor and discovered that she had both XX and XY cells in her body. Doctors believe that she had an intersex condition called chimerism, resulting from twins in her mother's womb merging to make her.
Good. At least I don't have to explain the basics of chimerism to you. So you should also know that there are many causes for chimerism, all of which include introducing cells from one being into a host, not unlike the ones you swallowed before you started recording this video. What? Come at me, bitch!
If your definition of male and female is strictly chromosomal, then you would have to say she's male and female, and yet able to get pregnant and give birth to children.
I don't have to say shit. Kiss my ass.
These kinds of conditions, when someone doesn't fit strictly into what we imagine as male or female, is called being intersex.
I'd like you to point me in the direction of the geneticist that says, "This person is not what I imagine a man or woman to be like." I mean, if that proves too difficult, then I guess you could just point me to the one that uses a series of characteristics in the classification of organisms. But that's no fun.
They're also often referred to as differences in sex development, or DSDs, but the preferred terminology is intersex.
There are a couple variants of DSD that should be pointed out for the sake of consistency. In the scientific community, DSD is an acronym for disorders of sexual differentiation. It also stands for differences of sex development in the wah please don't hurt my feelings community. And of course you don't like it, because everyone wants to advertise being a special snowflake, but no one wants to wear the special snowflake helmet.
You may have also heard the word hermaphrodite thrown around, but that's a very outdated and offensive word, and I wouldn't suggest that you use it.
Oh no, someone might get hurt feelings. I wonder when people will learn that the repression of words is the main reason they hold so much power and animosity. Remember when fuck used to be more than just a comma?
It's also just inaccurate because it means having both fully functioning male and female genitalia, which is not possible.
Actually, according to this case report, true hermaphroditism accounts for 5% of intersex cases. Claim refuted, bitch!
Here's a banana sticker.
Now you might be asking yourself, well, how common is it to be intersex? Couldn't this just be some kind of disorder that affects a very small number of people?
Well, yeah, I'll admit, that's what I was thinking.
Well, no. At the moment, estimates for how many people have some form of intersex condition range from 0.05% to 1.7% of the population.
Oh, fuck.
In the United States alone, that's somewhere between 160,000 and 5.4 million people.
Justin, let's put this into perspective. Taking the average of those numbers, in just the US, it would equate to 2.8 million people. This is roughly the population of Chicago. If everyone in Chicago were intersex, there would be no intersex people anywhere else in the United States.
But those also might be fairly conservative estimates, considering that a lot of people go their entire lives without ever knowing that they had an intersex condition, like the 70-year-old and the 46-year-old from earlier.
It could be, but it more than likely isn't. The chance of being born with a body that is not standard male or female is 1 in 100. The chance of being born not XX or XY is 1 in 1666. The other conditions are negligible with the exception of late-onset adrenal hyperplasia, but that is treatable and generally only characterized by extra body hair and severe acne. 1.7% is far more generous than you would make it sound.
And how our chromosomes work may be more complex than we currently know.
Be honest, how our chromosomes work is more complex than you currently know.
Since studies have found that parents with XX chromosomes who've given birth to children with XY chromosomes often end up integrating those XY chromosomes into their own bodies. And many people with XY chromosomes grow up with some of their parents' XX chromosomes in their body. That's just one of many factors that can contribute to someone having both XX and XY cells in their body, because our cells aren't 100% exactly the same all the time.
We're talking about microchimerism here. As Justin is saying, it is actually extremely common for chromosomes to be shared in this manner, even though they only account for about 1 in every 1,000 cells. In this particular example, the sharing of these chromosomes does not aid in your sexual development. In fact, it isn't even permanent. If you had to compare microchimerism to anything, it would probably be like, I don't know, backwash. Gross.
Lots of intersex babies with unclear genitalia undergo surgery that they obviously can't consent to make them conform to either male or female standards. If a doctor can't look at your genitals and decide if they're male or female, they can decide that they need to fix them. This is a terrible, terrible practice that's still going on in the United States and elsewhere in the world.
Probably the only thing here that I actually agree with, and still only partly. In cases of ambiguous genitalia, doctors looking at the genitals is a major understatement. Some of the methods and considerations used to determine how to correct this situation include pelvic ultrasound, chromosomal analysis, fertility potential, potential for growth of a penis, ability for internal sex organs to produce the appropriate sex hormones, and potential for future health risks. There is an elevated chance of tumor development in the gonads. However, I also feel that if the conditions permit, it should wait until the child can consent, considering it is irreversible and could cause more harm than good. Anyway, when you mentioned this earlier, I thought you were going to turn into some stupid fucking gender spectrum bullshit like this.
Intersex conditions can affect any number of these things. People can have XXY chromosomes, or XYY chromosomes, or XXXX chromosomes.
Klinefelter syndrome. People with XXY are phenotypically male. XYY syndrome. These people are also phenotypically male, and honestly, it shouldn't even be called a syndrome, considering all it does is make you taller. Tetrasomy X. Very rare disorder, only affects women. We all know why.
They can have combinations of chromosomes, or they can exhibit some male sex characteristics and some female characteristics.
Okay, I'm just about done here, Justin, and now I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. You've made a few decent arguments that are all devised just to debunk your straw man that says sex is solely determined by chromosomes present in your body. What you haven't taken into consideration, and this is very, very small, is how chromosomes actually work. What you are essentially purporting is that everything is completely up to chance. To put this very simply, the Y chromosome is what ultimately determines your sexual development. More specifically, it's the SRY gene located on the Y chromosome. If it is present, it will begin the process of developing male sex characteristics. If it is not, then a child will be female. Keep in mind that while it is possible to have XX males, the odds are about 1 in 25,000, or 0.004%. Additionally, scientists can also determine your biological sex simply by looking at your chromosomes and having no other background information. Intersex conditions affect just under 2% of the population, and that means that over 98% of the population fits the description laid out by geneticists. Genetic mutations occur, but that does not support a spectrum. There is far too much evidence to the contrary. You know what is a spectrum, though? Special snowflake syndrome. The only thing they have in common is that they're all fucking idiots. You've got a man who thinks he's a woman who thinks she's a man who thinks he's a woman who thinks she's Kevin Bacon.